This video is brought to you by CoolStuffInc.com and GatheringMagic.com, your place to explore the game.
This is Robert with my Anafenza, the Foremost deck. Now on to the deck, we have Anafenza the Foremost. Whenever our general, whenever she attacks, she can put a +1/+1 counter on a tapped creature, another tapped creature, and if a creature card would be put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, exile it. I feel we have a problem and a downside. The problem is she can't put a +1/+1 counter on herself, so some of the advantages that we have with our +1/+1 counters won't apply to her directly because she can't power up herself, but we have ways to put a +1/+1 counter on her. And an upside is that some people fail to neglect, and I think it was really fun to kind of brew around, was if a creature would be put into the graveyard from anywhere, exile instead. This is only your opponent's creatures, so cards that would return like your creatures from your graveyard to the battlefield and their creatures from the graveyard to their battlefield, you'll play those and they won't get any value, while you'll get all of it. Moving on to lands, we have a Sandsteppe Citadel for the 3-color tri-land. We have the Command Tower, a very good land for most of my double-colored commander decks. Then we have the Opal Palace, and this is one of the ways that we have to put a +1/+1 counter on Anafenza. It's one of our best ways to do such a thing, because I can pay 1 and tap it to add mana to my mana pool of any color, and if I spend it on my commander, it gets a +1/+1 counter for each time I've cast it from the command zone. Then we have Terramorphic Expanse and Evolving Wilds. And then we move on to the black-white fixing. We have the black-white Shock, Godless Shrine, the black-white Pain, Caves of Koilos, the black-white Scryland, Temple of Silence. I really do like the Scry versus an untapped fixing. I really do like it. Scoured Barrens and the Orzhov Guildgate. Then moving on to the black-green fixing, we have Overgrown Tomb, the black-green Shock, Llanowar Wastes, the black-green Pain, Jungle Hollow, the black-green Refuge Land, Temple of Melody, another Scryland, and Golgari Rot Farm, the bounce land. It's really nice. It's really nice. You can get another Scry. Golgari Guildgate. Moving on to the green-white fixing, we have a Temple Garden, Shock, the Windswept Heath, the fetch land, Selesnya Sanctuary, another bounce land, another Scry land with Temple of Plenty. Then we have Blossoming Sands and Selesnya Guildgate. Now, before we move on, the reason why I'm not running fetches in every category and why I wouldn't suggest it is because you don't have as much basic lands in this deck, which we'll get onto later. Moving on to some utility lands, we have Vault of the Archangel, using this mainly for lifelink. The Death Touch isn't as important, but still a bonus. We have a Grim Blackwoods. We have a little bit of a Graveyard Reanimator theme, and this is a good way to draw some cards in the colors that we're in. Gavony Township to put a +1/+1 counters on all your dudes. Moving on to some more utility, we have a Tranquil Thicket for some card draw. We have an Oran-Rief Vastwood to put a +1/+1 counter on Anafenza and any other green creature you may have. A Windbrisk Heights to get some cards into play. It's not too hard to get up to that ability, but never has been a problem. Secluded Steppe for a little bit more card draw. Then we have the basics. We have 2 basic plains, 3 basic swamps, and 3 basic forests. Then we move on to the artifacts. I prefer Lotus Petal over another basic because we can have 2 1-drops, and I really like that ability. And then we have Expedition Map, so usually searching for Selesnya Archangel or Gavony Township. Hopefully you don't actually have to find some fixing with this this artifact. Burnished Hart, some really good ramp for the multicolor deck, 3-color decks in particular, because you get to search for 2 of your colors. Staff of Nin, some extra card draw, and pingers are actually a lot more helpful than some people may think. Now we move on to the white cards. We have the 3 counter lords in white. The Abzan Falconer gives all your creatures with +1/+1 counters flying. We have the Ainok Bond-Kin, gives all your creatures with +1/+1 counters first strike. And then we have the Abzan Battle Priest, which gives all your creatures with +1/+1 counters with lifelink. With some big dudes, he gets you some pretty big lifelinks. Moving on to High Sentinels of Ereshkigal. He puts +1/+1 counters on Anafenza and a lot of your other dudes, and gets himself bigger in the process, but one of the main points I'd like to point out is the evasion with the flying there. Really helpful, block some dudes in the air, and stop a couple threats. This is a test, this Dragonscale General. I don't like it. It's been proven pretty good, but I personally don't like it. I'd rather be running an Eternal Witness or something as such, but I wanted to test him out. Then we have Herald of Anafenza. Put some extra dudes on there, never hurt. Then we have a Citadel Siege. At the beginning of your upkeep, choose Khans or Dragons. If you choose... if you choose Khans, put a +1/+1 counter on each of your dudes at the beginning of your combat. No, put 2 +1/+1 counters on one of your creatures at the beginning of your combat, sorry. That's what this card does. You're usually picking that mode. I've never found myself in a situation where I want to pick the other mode. Feat of Resistance gives some protection to one of your dudes and a +1/+1 counter to go along with it. I feel Resolute Archangel is a really good utility card. Puts me right back up to 40. Always useful. Then we have Fabled Hero. We have plenty of spells to activate his heroic, but the double strike really does help. You get lifelink quite a bit in this deck, and the double strike lifelink combo is quite amazing. Moving on to the black, we have the black +1/+1 counter lord, Mer-Ek Nightblade, giving all your other creatures with +1/+1 counters Death Touch. Then we have Retribution of the Agents. Some of our creatures give themselves +1/+1 counters and quite a bit of them, so we just turn that into removal with Retribution of the Agents. Moving on, we have Twilight Call. This is one of the cards I was talking about earlier. Each player returns all creature cards from his or her graveyard to the battlefield. They don't have any creatures in their graveyard, so they're not getting any cards back. So it's a really nice one-sided reanimator kind of thing. Then we have a Palace Siege. At the beginning of your upkeep, when it enters the battlefield, choose Khans or Dragons. At the beginning of your upkeep, return a creature card from your graveyard to your hand. Or if you choose Dragons at the beginning of your upkeep, each opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. Either mode on this card works pretty well. Multiplayer game, I prefer Dragons, but play quite a bit of single player Commander, so Khans is pretty useful for that recursion. Moving along with the reanimator kind of theme, we have a Zombify and a Shieldred, the Whispering one. She's a really good card. You're usually tutoring for her, and there's a card we'll get onto that she works really well with, and yeah, Swamp Walk always an added bonus. Then we have the Whip of Erebos for some more lifelink and some more recursion. Then we have some card draw in Harrowing Journey. Draw 3 cards for 3 life and 5 mana. I don't think it's too bad. You have 40 life, gaining some life, usually most of the time, so not too much more than drawing 3 cards. A Diabolic Tutor. Search up for Shieldred or anything you may need. Then you got a Desecration Demon. The Desecration Demon usually gets to attack. Putting a +1/+1 counter on them, they don't want to do that, and you want them to, because 1 less creature, 1 less blocker. He usually gets some form of buff, some static ability like Trample or something as such with the +1/+1 counterlords. Speaking of Trample, we have the Tuskar Captain. Each creature I control with a +1/+1 counter on it has Trample. It's a 2/3. And then we have Primal Vigor and we have Hardened Scales. Now, when you put +1/+1 counters on your dude, you want to go Hardened Scales first, then Primal Vigor, because you'll end up getting more counters that way. Most people have not thought about it and ended up getting less counters on their dudes for no reason. And Primal Vigor is whenever 1 or more token would be put onto the battlefield, double it, and the same thing with +1/+1 counters. And Hardened Scales adds 1 to the amount of +1/+1 counters that you're putting on a creature. Then we have the Bow of Nylea. All the abilities are nice, but typically you're using the +1/+1 counter ability, or you're putting cards back into your library, or you can be killing a flyer. That's always a nice little thing. Then we have, I don't remember the name of this card, but it's some mana ramp for 3 mana. You search your library for a basic land to put it on the battlefield tapped, and bolster 1. Then we have Wild Beastmaster. This is a really good creature because it makes all your other creatures bigger, and when you're attacking with Anafenza, she's not going to die when you're putting a +1/+1 counter on usually your Wild Beastmaster. It can get pretty out of hand. Then we have Frontier Siege to get some extra mana early, is what you're usually using it for on the Khan's ability. And you can use the Dragon's ability, but there aren't too many flyers in the deck, so that's not usually what you're going to be doing. And then we have Bear Umbra, and Bear Umbra gives target creature +2/+2, and Totem Armor, which protects it from basically a removal spell. Incremental Growth for 5 mana, put a +1/+1 counter on one thing, put 2 on another, and 3 on the next, which usually translates to put 4 +1/+1 counters on one creature, 6 on the next, and then 8. Then we have Deadbridge Goliath. The Scavenge is really nice, and it's also a really decent body for 4 mana. Then we have some ramp in Farseek and Rampant Growth. Moving on to the Orzhov cards, we have a Treasury Thrall for some repeatable recursion. We have a Magister of Worth with that same kind of everyone returns creatures, but it only ends up being you. Or you can just board wipe. We're not too resilient to board wipes, but having a few in the deck is fine. And it's also a really fun commander card, because the multiplayer games get down to some pretty interesting decisions. Then we have an Utter End, some removal for enchantments, artifacts, creatures, whatever you need, instant speed. Then we have Corpse Jack Menace. He doubles the amount of +1/+1 counters on whatever you want to put him. Then we have a Deadbridge Chant. You mill the top 10 cards of your library, and at the beginning of your upkeep, you choose a card at random from your graveyard if it's a creature put on the battlefield. Otherwise, it goes to your hand. It's a really nice random recursion, and I think it's really fun as well. Shieldred works really good with Jared's Orders, because you usually search up for Shieldred and X, because you're going to play Shieldred and get it right back from your graveyard, so really helpful. Putrefy, artifact removal when you need it, and then creature removal when you need that. Then we have Jared for some pretty sticky situations. Just sack all our creatures and do all the damage. I've gotten him up to the full 40 before. Reaper of the Wilds. The scry is really nice in this deck. I'm quite the fan of the mechanic. Then we have Dramoka, the Eternal, with that whenever a dragon I control attacks, I bolster 2. You can usually choose what you bolster on because you can put +1/+1 counters on whatever first, and then you bolster, so it's not exactly random. And then we have the Wings, one of my favorite cards in the deck. Enchanted creature has flying for 6 mana, and whenever enchanted creature deals combat damage to a player, you put that many 1/1 Sapperling creature tokens on the battlefield. This combos with Primal Vigor real nicely, because it doubles the amount of tokens you get, and attacking for 6 equals 12 saplings. It's really nice. Then we have an Ivory Tusk Fortress. Untap all your dudes with a +1/+1 counter on them. It's really nice. Siege Rhino because Siege Rhino. Abzan Ascendancy to make you more resilient against sweepers and put +1/+1 counters on your guys. Speaking of sweepers, we have Doom Blast. Choose one creature, destroy the rest. You're normally choosing your creature. Excuse me. Abzan Charm for some more card draw, or some removal, or some +1/+1 counters, however you want to do it. Such utility. Then we have Necrovolver. You typically do both kicker costs, but just the green one's fine. I never like doing the white one, but just the white one. But it's fine. Then we have Warden the Fishery. This was one of the turn counters into removal creatures I was talking about, because you can continue to do that last ability once you get there for 6 mana. Then we have a Deathrite Shaman for some utility. Then we have Dagatar, the Adamant, and he can be your alternate general, but I don't like him because you have a lot of cards centered around Anafenza and putting counters on her specifically. Then moving on to our Super Friend suite. I kind of liked doing this because it was really silly and very interesting. We have Ugin, the Spirit Dragon, a bolt when you need it, a sweeper when you don't, and some card draw later in the game. Then we have Elspeth, Sun's Champion. The 3 dudes is really nice. You're typically not using that -3 because it's killing your guys, but you can in a pickle. Then we got Liliana Vess. Discards a card. Search for a card in your library. You lose a little bit of value on that last ability, but it's worth it. Then we have Garruk Relentless to deal 3 damage to something. Flip him and search for some creatures. Shieldred, Anafenza if she gets tucked, which typically isn't too much of a problem, but there it is. Then we have Sorin, Lord of Innistrad. Typically just plop off his emblem to get some more life from your lifelink guys. Then we have Veraska, the Unseen, which basically reads for 5, destroy target non-land permanent. I've never made any assassins with her, and I have never +1'd her and gotten value from it. No one's ever bothered to attack Veraska. And then the absolute boss, or haymaker in this deck, is Aljani, Mentor of Heroes. Put 3 +1/+1 counters divided as you choose among 1, 2, or 3 creatures. Can sometimes translate to 4 counters on up to 3 creatures. 4 counters on each one of those creatures. When you run out of gas, you can look at the top 4 and get an aura creature or planeswalker from them and put it in your hand, and then put the rest on the bottom. Or if you get them up to 8, you can gain 100 life. I've never done that. I would like to. I'm going to be playing some later today, so I'll see how that turns out. Thanks for watching CMDR decks with my deck tech on Anafenza the Foremost. Please subscribe and favorite.